Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. We want to let you know that we have once again been honored with a nomination for the Hockey Podcast of the Year via the Sports Podcasting Awards. And all you need to do to help us is go to ourkidsplayhockey.com and click on the Vote Now button. It asks you a couple questions. You're in and you're out, and you have voted for us for Hockey Podcast of the Year. I want to thank you all for being a wonderful, wonderful audience and helping us get to this stature of hockey podcasting, because we've done it as a family, as the hockey friends and families around the world. Thanks so much and enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Our guest today is Christie's sister. It's Teresa Marzec. Teresa lives in Saugerties, New York, and she's a doctor of physical therapy with 42 years of experience from across the country. She and her husband have two grown children who both played hockey. Her daughter, Michelle, also currently serves in the U.S. Navy and plays for the rec team. Teresa is also a level 4 hockey coach and still plays recreationally in her hometown on a team called the Nightmares. Teresa, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So first question, the obvious question, tell us how your hockey journey began. Tell us how you got involved. Tell us about your kids. Tell us about everything when it comes to hockey.
When I lived in Paterson, New York, there was a little girl across the street from us, and she invited my daughter to play hockey in Pauling. Pauling, you've heard of Pauling? Hockey teams. Yeah. So got her started with that. And then my son said, I want to play hockey too. But I want to be a goalie. And she wanted to be the defenseman. So they both were 18 months apart so they could play on the same team for many years. And
this is a very common story.
I was involved with the teams, and they found out that I let them know I was a physical therapist. So when there was an injury, they would call on me to evaluate the child or the adult. A lot of adults got hurt. And then that's where it came. I got involved with starting to learn to play hockey, and I learned how to play. And from that, I started to coach, and then I got into the coaching, and then made my way up to a level 4. And eventually I started a little women's team. It was called Mom's Hockey, because when the kids, the end of February, the kids would stop playing hockey because March 1st, the spring sports started. And the ice arena that I was at had a lot of open ice. So they let me buy the ice, and I could have a good time that moms could come and play hockey, because it was, you had to figure out when a good time would be, that the husband or their significant other would watch the kids so they could come to the arena for an hour. And I was able to do that. We started Mom's Hockey. And from that, it turned into the women's hockey team.
You know, I think what's really interesting is we did not grow up around hockey.
Oh, my dad made an ice arena in the backyard.
Yeah.
So we skated.
But not real hockey.
No,
team.
not
we were
hockey.
Never involved with hockey. Football, basketball was really big. And track was big in our communities. Mm-hmm. But hockey really wasn't in our lives growing up, other than just the backyard rink. So it's kind of fun to see how, as we got older.
Yeah, and then because my kids played hockey, her kids started playing hockey. And then from there, it went into where she evolved into a book.
Yeah, we got introduced to hockey. We went full in. We were all in. Yeah, we were all in.
No, I love it.
Yeah, I dragged her kids to clinics, and they started. And
but I love it, though. I mean, it has given us so many
rewards.
It's
so fun.
Yeah,
you know.
And the fact that she's a level 4 coach now, that is so impressive. I mean, she took it to another level, 4 levels. It's amazing.
We're going to get there. I think it's funny. You said my kids play hockey, her kids play hockey, and now our play hockey. That's a plug for the show, obviously.
I know.
Teresa, it's an amazing story. One is obviously you have a family of trailblazers over there in the Graziano household, but everybody's growing up to do amazing.
We went to Toronto a lot, Mississauga, to the what was it, Elgin goalie camp.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, we went there, and that was the best goalie camp ever. And I would watch in the stand and write down everything I saw for drills and bring them back home and make the goalies do that. And any of the camps I took my kids at, I would sit there and just write down everything and then bring it back. So I learned a lot in Canada.
Well, let me ask you this, because I want to dive into your coaching experience in a little bit. Again, we're talking with two women here who broke through brick walls in their respective fields, whether it's physical therapy, whether it's coaching, whether it's being a TV news anchor. But a level 4 coach, you told us a little bit before the episode started, you were the only woman in the class. Why don't you walk us through your coaching journey and how that's affected your life? And a little later in the episode, we're definitely going to get into PST stuff, because I know we have people listening that want to know a lot about that when it comes to injuries and making sure their kids are safe. But we have to ask about the coaching first, because this is an amazing.
I know. Well, I ended up being on the bench with the kids because of the injuries. And for me to be on the bench, I had to get a coaching certification. So I started off with a level 1, and that was my in. And then I pretty much looked at the first aid kits that they had, and they were meager. So I had to up the ante on that to be better prepared for, I mean, there could be there were horrific injuries on the ice. And if you were better prepared, you could minimize the damage. So from there, I just went to level 2 because it was required.
Right.
It's required by USA Hockey that everyone get to a level 4. So I just went through the motions and I did it. And then I could coach on any level. I could be at any level bench. I pretty much stayed at the JV high school level. I never went to varsity level, but the travel teams, they used me. If there was an injury, I would go into the locker room immediately. And I could because I had my background checks. You know, it's important that you have that background check so they know that the parents know that you're safe being with their child, especially with me, that I'm going to do a physical exam on them and to see if they needed to go to the emergency room or if it was something that was minor and I could take care of it and diagnose the problem. And go on from there. But, you know, like I said, USA Hockey required that you went to a level 4.
But when you went to Lake Placid to get your certification.
I know, I was the odd duck. I was such an odd duck there. And when they didn't realize that I was a woman and they put me down, like I told you, as Teresa Marzec, and everybody had to share rooms. So I went into the room and I was unpacking, and these 2 men came in to share the room with me, and they go, "Wow, USA Hockey's really gotten liberal." I'm like, "Oh no,
Yeah,
you're not staying with me." Oh no. We marched down, and they had a good laugh about that. But I had to sit up front. You know, I sat right up front at Lake Placid, and you know, had all these men with all these comments in the back. I'm like, okay, guys, you know, watch your language, and they did. They were very respectful. They all like toned it down because I was there, which was nice. But what a good clinic. It was so exciting to go to level 4.
But for other women listening, I mean, how difficult is it to achieve your level 4?
It was, you had to travel. And I also did the women's hockey certification. They had that in Connecticut, New Hartford, Connecticut. So there was you have to be willing to put in the time and the money to pay for that journey. But the rewards they were awesome. You know, I felt comfortable with the women. We had to scrape for equipment. So I put a box in the arena and asked for used hockey equipment. I washed it all. I hit the ice arena, the Kiwanis ice arena. They could not do enough for me. They let me have carte blanche open. They said, you can have an apartment here if you want, but they let me have a whole room that I could store equipment and I could funnel through as kids couldn't. They didn't have the money to buy the equipment. So I would, you know, get the equipment donated and give it to them. But now USA Hockey has a really good program where you could get equipment to start a kid out. But later on, it's not there. So you have to kind of scrape for it. So you could get any kid playing hockey. And we did fundraisers just to pay for kids. You know, they could, I had a book, it was a book, and you could sell ads. And 80% of the money they raised went to pay for their hockey, and 20% went to pay for the book. So a lot of kids who could not afford it were able to, just by having this book published. And I could get the book published for free, you know, taking that 20%, and they got their hockey, you know, paid for relatively cheap. They had a relatively cheap program, and they could go play.
Right. So, you know, other communities out there are listening. You can get creative, and you can open hockey up for a lot of kids who might have that financial barrier. You just got to get a little creative, you know, put some effort into it, and you can open the door for a lot of kids in your community, like my sister did. I'm really proud of her for that.
Right. I think what Teresa is saying too is that, you know, you what she was doing, and the whole idea about, you know, having to do all that fundraising. I think that's why the NHL really stepped in with their First Steps program and really tried to fill that void, so parents and communities, you know, didn't have to do all that running around, and, you know, just getting the equipment and for one fee. I mean, literally, kids are playing hockey for the year, right? Less than the cost of even a pair of skates at this point. So it is an incredible program. But I wanted to go back to Teresa, when you said at the beginning, you know, about your experience with the first aid kits. I know one of my mentors in USA Hockey, when I first got involved in the coaching education program, was this guy, Joe Tremarchi, down in Long Island. And it's like one of those things that it's the last thing you think about, and it's the most important thing you need. You know, if you're thinking about it when you need it, it's too late, right? And I think, you know, knowing, you know, that your med kit can't have 2 ice packs and bandages, you know, 2 Band-Aids in there. It's so important for people like you in the profession too, to know and say, okay, well, we're going to review this and know that in the case of emergency, we're going to be prepared. And especially in hockey, and more importantly, because of the way hockey's gone now with cross ice and with the 8U and kids sliding into each other and skates are up, and, you know, there's literally skating around with knife blades. It is so important to understand that little piece from, you know, your perspective as first off as a volunteer, but just knowing from being in the profession, that knowing, well, okay, well, there's so much more here than just, you know, making sure the kids are having a good line change, making sure our you know, everything's stocked. I know one of the things Joe talked about too in our new era of cell phones and everything is making sure that you actually had cell phone reception in the rink. I mean, up in Pauling where you are, you know, iconic facility, unbelievable place, Kiwanis, both facilities, you're in those places and your cell phone service maybe not be the best. You just got to be prepared for that kind of stuff. But I love the fact that you were proactive in, you know, knowing that you're, I was going to say student athletes, I guess at one point they were, but that your athletes, you know, were protected proactively, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone out there wants to think about their first aid kit, you want to buy a bag that has compartments in it. And you want to prioritize like an outside zipper compartment, if you could find one. They're online, but that's where you put the stuff you're going to use right away. You want to have compression bandages, huge, something that would absorb. They almost look like they're a big pad. You want to have that handy for bleeding. You got to stop the bleeding right away. I've had injuries where a skate blade has gone across the palm and exposed the tendon. That's an immediate injury. You want to have a huge compression bandage to put on. You want to make sure you have cling or gauze wrap. You want to have bandage scissors, not regular scissors. They have to be one that has a kind of a blunt end on it that you could cut through the sock. If you had to cut through the sock, you want to make sure you don't stab the child or the adult. So you'll see a bandage scissors. You want that immediately if you have to access an area and you have to cut the equipment. You want to have your ice packs. You want to have you do have to have all the phone numbers of every parent and child. You've got to have that, because a lot of parents have their kid take a ride with another student, another parent, and you don't, they're at work or something. So you got to make sure you have an emergency contact for every kid on that ice. You want to have cravats, there's slings or a sling. The most injuries I saw were a separation of the AC joint. If the coach has to make sure that the child or the older adult, if they have the puck, you skate along the board or you skate away from the board. If you're in that danger zone of 3 feet next to the board and you get hit, first thing you hit is the shoulder. And I see that if they're skating in that danger zone and they get hit, that AC joint, bam, it separates. And you need to put that arm into a sling. You need your ice packs on there. It's an injury that might take 3-4 weeks to heal. But if the coach is good and teaches them, skate along the board with that puck or skate towards the middle of the ice, don't go in the danger zone 3 feet from the boards.
You're going to see a lot of injuries. And you saw a lot of that.
I saw a lot of AC injuries. I did. And it's totally avoidable, but you have to think when you're on the ice. But concussions,
Yeah.
a lot of concussions. I would have a pen light in there to test the pupil. You want a pen light. Ace wraps, 6-inch, 4-inch, 2-inch ace wrap, depending on the area. If you see a fracture of the wrist, you could grab a magazine. You gently wrap the wrist in a compression ace wrap. You take an ace wrap, you gently wrap it in there. You put an ice pack in there. You take a magazine. You cradle the arm in a magazine. You wrap it in an ace wrap. You put that arm in a sling so it's protective, and off they go to the ER. You have to be prepared.
There's no doubt that I think with the time of the season this will come out, this is the perfect time to get over to CVS, right? And whatever, the different places and load up.
No.
And it's funny because I can think about all the years my kids played hockey, and I know for a fact we were not equipped with all of that, because when my son he broke his wrist, he just held it like this until we got to the ER. There was no one helped wrap it or don't touch them. That's what everybody said.
You can't be afraid. You have to be prepared. But a magazine,
right?
Simple thing, a simple sling, a simple protective device. The ice arena, the Qantas ice arena, they were so good. I went and I said, "Do you have a first aid kit?" And they showed me this wimpy little thing that you put in your car. I go, "Oh my God." So they gave me carte blanche, go to the drugstore, get what you want. I made this massive, first aid kit for them. And I was putting it together when, a kid on the ice completely slashed the tendons on his hand, on the palm of his hand. And I was like, what? Off I go. And away he went. And I'm going to tell the parents, if you have an injury, if you have a blade injury, you find a specialist, a hand specialist immediately. You have to have that surgery done within 24 hours. Do not let them go to the ER and they say, "Oh, come back in a week." Don't do that. Go immediately to a hand surgeon. You have 24 hours to get those tendons reattached.
Right.
And I told the parents to do that. They did. The kids' total functioning of the hand. But I've seen where they've gone to emergent care and they say, "Oh, come back in a week." Don't do that.
I'll say this, continue what you're talking about. Being prepared is really most of the battle here. So for the coaches out there and the parents, you should be making sure that the rink at minimum is equipped with a lot of these materials. And if you have a team manager, it might be smart to have somebody around that even carries them around for your team. Like, look, not to go super dark here, but I do need to say this. People have died in arenas because the arena was not prepared. And again, it's not fun to talk about, but it has happened. It's one of the reasons why defibrillators are now almost in every arena. I think they have to be in every arena. So, I mean, that is obviously the extreme, but there's also the injury side of these things. And again, you know, the key with injuries is not, obviously prevention, but if something happens, again, Teresa, as you're saying, it's knowing what to do, knowing what to have so that it doesn't get worse, right? So using the hand injury, if a tendon is exposed, again, I'm not a medical doctor or a physical therapist, but as you said, if you don't get that treated right away, you're looking at long-term damage, right? Where this is where knowledge goes a long way. I also say, and it's a groaner for a lot of coaches, but you should be walking through some course. I know USA Hockey does a lot with this. Go find that extra information. There's extra courses you can take just to know. All right.
Oh, there's parents on the team that you could access. There's a lot of nurses, doctors,
right?
Anybody, paramedics, use them.
Identify
but
them
not
too.
to go all dark, but it is a fun sport. It is the most hysterical thing you ever wanted to do. You know what I like is you wear that equipment and it looks like, oh my God, look at that fall. You get right back up and you're like going. I was like, how did they do that? I go, it doesn't hurt. I look at these figure skaters. Oh my God, they fall. It's like,
easy on the figure.
I know, but you fall. That
tough,
hurt.
Man.
I'm sorry. Like, I can do this tremendous tumble. I get right back. Oh yeah, I'm going to get you.
Right. Listen, one of the things that marks ice sports is we just get back up unless we physically can't. I'll tell you guys a really funny story. So Teresa, my wife is a doctor, a medical doctor, and we were living in England. Now, England, for those of you who don't know, has a very different healthcare situation than we do. They have something called NHS, the National Healthcare System. So when injuries would happen over there, when I was coaching professional hockey over there, when injuries would happen there, you were done for the game. If it was significant enough that you had to come off the ice, you were probably done for the game. You had to go to the hospital, and it would usually take a long time, like days to weeks, to get something either fixed or diagnosed. So again, it's a different situation there medically. So I remember my wife was with us for one game. I can't mention any names here, but one of the players cut his lip. All right. And he comes to the locker room because he was bleeding quite a bit. And my wife is there and she walks in the locker room because I was working there. So they invited her in and she goes, I can fix that for you. I can maybe stitch it or glue it and get you back on the ice. And I remember him saying, what, you can do that? And she goes, yeah. And he goes, but what, should I go to the hospital? She goes, do you want to play or not? You're a hockey player, right? Right. And the thing was, what was funny is he said, yeah, do it. But he was so shocked that someone could fix him right away and get him back. Cause he's like, that's it. I'm done for 2 weeks. And she did. I'm pretty sure she glued it back together. Hockey player. He got back out there and he didn't miss a game. But I always thought that was a funny story because I remember seeing the shock on his face, like, I can go back out there. Whereas here it's, I have to go back out there. Right. But that's a funny story to begin with. Right. But why don't you tell us a story of, again, you said a little bit about across the hand, any other crazy injury stories that you can talk about?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I got you excited now.
Yeah. There was this fundraiser game and I was playing defense and it was a mixed league. And this guy hit me so hard, threw my back out. I could not stand up. And my daughter, she was in the locker room getting changed because she was playing in the next game. Now, I taught her how to do manipulations. I like back manipulations. So I crawled into the locker room and I go, Michelle, fix my back. And she went, boom, 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 put me right back. And I'm like, son of a gun, I'm going to get you. And I went right back out there. But just because she knew how to do it, just fix my back. I'm going back out there. And I did. I was so mad at that guy. Oh, the guys on the bench, they were ready to attack this guy. Why did he hit her? What's the matter with him? They were so good. They were ready to defend me. But I fixed him, boy. I went up to him and, what'd you do that for? But I got right back out.
I think we just saw Coach Marzec come out a little bit there, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah, Coach Marzec.
I could see that one got you going. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I love it. I mean, it's just like the competitiveness of, that's what I heard about, doing, as your life up in the Kiwanis Ice Arena, just doing all the stuff that you're doing and the energy level. I mean, you can hear it in your voice, right? But when people like you that are associated with these youth programs, that's the main component is not hockey background, knowledge of hockey, even to go to the coaching clinics. That's great. I mean, obviously I'm a proponent of that, but the energy and the passion that you can bring into a building is really, that's what you need, right? Because there's a lot of people that are really good hockey people, but with zero passion and zero energy, nothing really gets done. So it's really fun to hear, as much as your resilience is to jump back on the ice, after a, injury, I guess, that you wouldn't have classified that. But I think, just even knowing the stuff you've done with growing, all the different activity, youth programs. I mean, I love hearing about, and I know Kiwanis pretty well, and knowing that, from where they went from, such a small little group of kids to, over like 150 learn to skate kids in this little tiny community, bringing in adaptive sports, and sled hockey and spearheading that. And obviously, I think it's,
sled hockey?
Is it the Phillies program? That's the women's program?
That's the girls. Yeah.
Girls.
The girls.
Yeah.
The Nightmares is the women.
The Nightmares. Yeah. So, but I think all of those things you hear about, you're doing when most people like, okay, yeah, I helped do the learn to skate. I mean, you're actually, involved with the whole ecosystem of these arenas.
So that sled hockey, you mentioned that's like, you know how that started? I got the high school team to play against the sled hockey team, the New York Rangers sled hockey team. They came up, they brought all these sleds to play against our high school team. So they got their asses whipped. They got their I'll say it in Polish. I'll say it in Polish. Dupa. Okay, you know dupa.
I like the way you said it first, but we'll let it slide.
They got whooped by them. But that the New York Rangers, they donated a sled to my rink, to the rink I go to. And I got the Kiwanis Club, because I'm a Kiwanis member, to donate 2 more sleds. They're like $900 a piece.
Right.
And they gave me the money to buy 2 sleds. And I had clinics, kids with spina bifida come and learn how to do sled hockey. They were good enough to send some coaches up to teach them. So it was just weird how you said sled hockey. I'm like, oh my gosh.
And as a physical therapist in the schools for many years, she would, help children with spina bifida, would be
special needs.
Yeah, special needs. And you saw a lot of benefits when they got out on the ice. There were so many things that they can't do. This was amazing.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. You had to think quick, but the learn to play hockey with those little 5-year-olds. You could get these rubber buckets, and you could stack them. They're like sand buckets, but you stack them in a tier, and you take the kid, they're laying on the ice, they can't skate, but you lay them on the ice and you shoot them into the buckets. The buckets all fall down on them. They get up, they have to crawl back to you. And then you say, okay, the next time you've got to go on your hands and knees. Okay, now you got to go tall kneel. You got to come back. So each time they have to come back in a different way, but you just shoot them into there and the buckets fall on them, and they're so hysterical. And
they don't realize they're learning because they're having fun.
And then you tell them, okay, this time I want you, when I shoot you, I want you to roll. And they roll all the way and knock the buckets down, and you have to think quick. And then pretty soon they're standing up skating. It was like, poof.
Yeah.
One of my favorite one of my favorite changes about how hockey has been taught over the last 10, 15 years is exactly what you're talking about. I remember when the ADM came into place and all those games were in the drill book, and a lot of coaches were upset about it. I remember that. This isn't hockey, but having coached my son's Adams team last year, I borrowed a lot of those. I did the tennis balls on the ice, and I told them to get them, put them in the bucket. They're learning how to stand up and sit down, and it takes the fear out of the game, right? I mean, again, for you young coaches out there, coaches that teach young kids, the first lesson, again, if I may offer some advice, first lesson I always teach kids, whether they're skating, it's skating, it's hockey, it's anything skating, is the first rule is that it's okay to fall down. Right. That's the first thing I always teach the kids, especially if they have pads on. And then I make them fall down and get up about 20 times, and it becomes funny.
Yes.
Right. Same thing, like, again, you get rid of that fear early, because you can't move forward if you're ready to fall down in hockey. It's going to happen.
No.
Right. And then they always love it when I give the example of me falling down, which is basically me trying not to throw my back out. But, it's something. So I want to transition here. Like, it's amazing the work you've done in the game. Again, as Mike just said, it's much more than just volunteering, right? You're going the extra mile. You're making sure that the game is accessible to people that it might not be accessible to. That is what this show is absolutely all about. All of us on here do that in some way. But I would be remiss if I didn't jump into PT and making sure that we talk to the audience a little bit more about what we talked about earlier of common injuries, how we can prevent them, in the sense of, you talked about AC joints, concussions, but let's walk the coaches through and the parents through. Maybe these are the 3 or 4 things, if your kid's playing hockey, especially at a high level, just keep an eye out for this, whether it be preventative measures or post measures after injury, right? I'm in physical therapy right now for a shoulder injury and a back injury that they actually fixed, which was great. Now I'm very superstitious about doing all the exercises they taught me every day so it doesn't reoccur. But why don't you walk the coaches and the parents through this, and even if there's any kids listening, of things they can do, and if an injury happens, what they should do. Because I would say it's like braces, right? If you're wearing braces and you don't wear your retainer afterwards, your teeth are going to get messed up again, right? So recovery is insanely important to injuries. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that we convey that through you today.
Yeah. All right. I did mention about the AC joint, your acromioclavicular joint. That's right in here. If they do suffer that, one of the tests I do to see if they can go back on the ice.
This is a shoulder injury, just for the people that are listening.
This is a shoulder.
This is a shoulder injury, yeah.
Okay, I'm talking about this. When they're ready to go back on the ice, I make them take out their stick and do a hard backhand shot. If they can do a hard backhand shot without any pain, they're okay to go back on the ice. I really do. I test them like that.
Right.
Knee injuries. How many knee injuries have you seen? Meniscus, that's the little pads in between the knee, the ligaments along the side of the knee. It's called a provocative test. When a person, child, adult, injures their knee, I make them stand on the knee, single leg stance, and I look for stability. I look up and down the back. I look to see if there's these little bones in the back of the hips. And I look to see if one goes up, one goes down when they stand on the leg. So that tells me that the muscle on the side of the hip is not holding the hip level. I look at the bottom of the knee and I see if it's wobbly. If it's wobbly, I might take the 2 bones in the knee. The femur is at the very top. The tibia is at the bottom. I'll take the tibia and I'll rotate it out, and I'll take the femur and I'll rotate it in. If I see that instability, I kind of lock it in. And if they say, oh, that feels better, I'm like, oh. I might do kinesio tape. I don't know if you know what kinesio tape is. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, it's that sports tape. No. So there's a way that you could do, it's kind of like a barber pole. You do this taping of the leg, and on top of the kinesio tape, there's another tape called leukotape, and it sticks on top of the kinesio tape, and it adds, there's a way to make, it's called the tab. You put a little tab on it and you put the leukotape over, so it gives a massive neurological input. Right. And they're much more stable on the ice. And then I'll get them to do certain exercises to improve the strength of that big butt muscle. The muscle on the side of the hip is overused. So I need to improve the strength of, there's a little muscle on top of the knee called the vastus medius oblique. That needs to be strengthened. That's only works between 30 degrees and 0 degrees of extension. So I need to improve the strength of that. And I'm going to look at the flexibility of the hamstring. Are the hamstrings holding back the knee too tight? Another test I do on the knee is I might have them bend the knee. And I might put my hand along the patella, which is the kneecap. So I might just gently support the kneecap on the bottom and have them bend. They'll say, oh, that feels better or not. I might move it to the middle part of the knee, have them bend. I might have them move it to the top of the knee and I just support it and see. And if they think that helps them, then I know that it's called a patellar tracking disorder. So the patella is not staying the femur has these two big bones, and the kneecap is supposed to sit in it. So sometimes when they bend, it slips up. So I might take the kinesio tape, lay it along the side, and there's a certain way to do it where you tighten it up, and then you put the Leuco tape, you put a tab on there to hold the patella in a little better. So you're making the knee track properly, so you use the muscles properly and you'll get stronger. So these are little provocative tests that I do. If there's a shoulder problem, sometimes I have seen shoulder dislocations, and you could get instability or weakness in the shoulder. And I might have them move the shoulder up, and they'll say, oh, I can only move it this far. And I'll take what's called the scapula, and I'll support the little wing bones on the back of the scapula and make the scapula move. And if it does, there's a certain way to put the kinesio tape to allow that arm to move better. And then I will I'll use like, I don't know if you know that stretchy TheraBand. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that I'll have them do certain exercises to strengthen, it's called the subscapular muscle and the rotator cuff muscle. I'll test to see what muscles are weak, and then put them on an exercise program for that. Hand and wrist injuries, I'll take them through a range of motion test. If I see that they're having pain, there's a device called a Gaucho, and it's an instrument-driven massage tool. It looks like a butter knife. They're all different size. Have you ever seen them? They're metal heavy.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm familiar with all this, but yeah.
Okay. So if they're having pain, I might use the Gaucho in the entire area of the joint. Up, if it's the leg, I might use the whole leg. I'll have them move as I do this. You know,
it feels like a knife too when you're using it.
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't.
No, I know. It's like a scrape though.
It shouldn't hurt. It's supposed to just calm the area down,
right,
and balance out, because sometimes you have muscles that work too much or nerves that are too much innervated, and other ones that aren't, and this balances out. And if they tell me they have a 50% reduction in pain, then I might add a kinesio tape on top of that.
Right.
So it just adds to it. But there's a lot. You could always, you could go to a physical therapist if you need. Not that I'm promoting it, PT or chiropractor. And if it's not an injury that needs surgical intervention. I mean, if like in the knee, you have to find out if the meniscus is torn. If you have a torn meniscus and it's flopping back and forth, there's no exercise that's going to fix that. No, that needs to be a surgical intervention in that. And that you'll find out it locks, the knee locks, and then sometimes it doesn't. So you have a loose body in there.
But so many kids, especially the girls playing lacrosse, we've seen a lot of meniscus tears. Sophia also suffered that. So
because their hips are out too far, so you have too much of an angle of the knee, and that sets you up for meniscus or ligament.
Young girls really need to be aware of that. But I think it's great that physical therapy is an option if you don't need surgery, though. So that's something that our listeners should really, pay attention to. Listen to your body.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's happening with me right now. So real quick, so Teresa, you're proving two things right now. It's that whenever you listen to Our Kids Play Hockey, you should be bringing a pad of paper and a pen to take notes. The other thing, too, is if you don't want to do that, make sure you have a good physical therapist on your team that knows everything that she's talking about, right? No, what's funny is a lot of the stuff you're talking about now didn't exist when I was playing as a young kid. And the tapes are unbelievable what they're able to do. And some of these, I should say advancements in the field have been incredible. Again, quick story, then I have a pretty big question for you, actually. I think that our audience will appreciate, but I tore my labrum when I was 17. I was after my shoulder popping out 5 times. I've told this story before on the show, so I'm not going to go deeply into it, but I had to have surgery when I was 17, my senior year of high school. Now, I don't know if anybody knows this, but my labrum on the same shoulder is now torn again. All right. A byproduct of carrying 2 young children around for the last 7 years of my life. But I'm in a position where it does need surgery, but I don't need it immediately. So I'm now in physical therapy, and they have strengthened my shoulder. My range of motion is much better, to the point of, I do believe one day I will get the surgery, keeping in mind that we just got out of a pandemic. I didn't want to be in a hospital. But they've really done things to it that I didn't think were possible. I do not have the full range of motion, but it is probably 80% better than it was when I went in. So it's one of those things you have to gauge, keeping in mind too, that I am not a youth hockey player anymore. I am a father of 2. I won't say my age on the air, but my point is that, depending on where you're at in your life, you have to make those decisions. Now, here's a really important question, all right, for youth hockey players particularly. We all grow up watching the NHL, and we'll see the guys in the Stanley Cup final play through torn everything, destroyed shoulders, used to play through concussions. They don't do that too much anymore, but these major, major injuries. And we grow up with the mentality of whatever it is, we play through it. Okay. And the truth is this: if you're under 18, you're not in a position probably making that call wisely. That's why your parents are so important. So, Teresa, the question I have for you is, there is a big difference between an injury where you can go back and play without the fear of injuring it further, and an injury where you want to go back to play, but you could really seriously injure yourself, right? Long term. My belief is that if a doctor, a physical therapist, a nurse, or any medical professional says to, I'll say, my son or my daughter, if you go back out there, you are risking serious injury, I will tell them you cannot go back out there. All right. If they say to me, it's going to hurt, but you can play, obviously they can go and play. Can you talk about, specifically for the coaches and the parents, that situation, what you should probably be telling your kids, and when you have to put your pride aside as a parent and say, you need to sit down, right? Because again, I can see the scenario right now. It's a championship or a playoff game. Your kid's one of the top kids on the team. Something happens to their knee or their shoulder, and it's a big risk. It's just not worth risking the long-term injury. That's what being part of a team is all about anyway, right? So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that and advice for the parents and the coaches out there of when these situations arise.
You know what the worst one? A kid with a concussion.
Right.
That's the worst one. The parents say, he's all right. He's got a hard head. He can go back out. If you have repetitive stress injuries,
right,
you're not. You're talking permanent brain damage.
Right.
Your head is like moving very loosely in the skull, and you could just fall very hardly on the ice, and you could get a concussion because your brain floats. That's the hardest one, I think, because you can't see the injury. When it's outside of the body, I can show them how unstable that joint is. I can show them. I can't show them the inside of a brain. I can't do that. They're the hardest patients to say, your kid really shouldn't play.
Right.
It's too much of a risk.
We've had cases, and I can recall one case where it was a goalie's parents. She had 3 concussions, probably had a 4th, and they shopped around for a doctor until they found a doctor, because they weren't going to let her back out on the ice unless she had a doctor's approval. And she shopped around to find a doctor that gave her approval. Was that really worth it?
Is that parenting? I mean, what does that say about you as a parent too? I mean,
they wanted her to be seen by scouts. That was more important than her head.
Yeah, it freaks me out when that pride comes ahead of protecting their kids. And look, I understand the pride. I mean, I'm a parent. Mm-hmm. I get it. We all do. Everybody on the show gets that. But you got to think ahead of long-term brain damage. When I was a kid, and this is really true for you, Mike, and all of us, right? A concussion was a day-to-day. Okay, get back up, but you bumped your head. It was really Sidney Crosby, to the disappointment of many, that changed this in hockey when he sat out an entire year with a pretty serious concussion, right? But he sat out for an entire year and basically said, "This is my brain." Right. And I think, Mike, I'd love your thoughts on this too. I think that really changed the conversation in hockey that, wow, if Sidney Crosby is going to sit out an entire year, maybe we should rethink this. And then obviously the NFL and CTE put this to another level, but yeah, concussions, I mean, it's medically proven now beyond a doubt that even a minor concussion, you need to sit, you need to let your brain rest for an extended period of time. Or I'm going to say this again, you are risking long-term brain injury for your child, right? And by the way, when you're concussed, you're not in a position to make the call to go back out there. I have been concussed and I have gone back out there. I look back at it now going, I wasn't thinking because my brain wasn't working correctly. Mm-hmm. Mike, obviously at your level of coaching too, and Teresa, that doesn't take anything away from yours, but Mike, you've experienced this a lot as this transitioned in your coaching years, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's still a stigma though for athletes, right? That you're not tough if you can't, if you can't play through any injury, shoulder, arm, leg. And I listen, I'm as guilty of it as anybody, probably not with concussions, because I just feel like I put myself in a situation to be as educated as possible outside of being, a medical professional about what the effects of not even knowing you have a concussion, just head injuries over and over and over and over again. And the way you treat your body, is one thing, but your head is, like I said, you could get labrum surgery, you can have knee surgery, you can get hand surgery. There's not a lot you can do once your brain's damaged in the concussion world. But I think it's really more, having people like Teresa on, and the educational side for parents. It's not that you're not tough enough, but certainly I think, for somebody like Sidney Crosby, maybe it's easier for him to sit out because he doesn't have as much on the line as a kid that's thinking, oh, the minute I'm out, I'm never getting back in. Or if I don't show that I can, if I tell somebody about this, it devalues me in some way. So it is hard. And I think the higher levels you get, now the problem is, right, we all think our kids are at high levels. We think 9-year-olds are at a high level. So like, oh my God, if my 9-year-old misses this opportunity, it's going to affect their career. I'm like, well, there is no career. You're 9. But what
are you talking about, Mike? What do you mean?
I know.
My kid's 7.
I've got to get on that plane and go to Chicago. I have to do it. It's part of what, but I can see as you get higher and higher and higher, and you get into college and the OHL and you get into, NCAA and minor pro, it becomes harder and harder to admit when you're injured, because the time you sit out could affect the future of your game. I get that. But we're talking to parents here of children, and it's your obligation, your duty to say, no, you're injured. You're sitting out. We are all on the same team. And I'll tell you, on the coaching side, it's the coach could be the strongest advocate for this, because if the coach just says, yeah, you can play, you're going to sit on the bench right next to me. Okay, you're cleared. I get it. I'm not taking it. I do that. I've done that multiple times where I've gotten a lot of flack for it, where I've just said, okay, I get it, but you're sitting right. I know mom and dad said you're okay, but you're going to sit next to me for the game. That's it.
Right.
And it takes
the right as a coach too.
Takes the pressure off the kid.
Yeah, that's your right as a coach to do that. And again, you might take flack for it later, but you did.
No, there's no doubt about it. But maybe I'm wrong. But let's hope I am.
Here's a conversation for all of us, right? Things I don't see. Again, I'm a younger coach in terms of children. I've only coached adults and college hockey players. But here's something I don't see in youth hockey is parents and coaches saying to the kids, by and large, if you are injured, do not be afraid to tell me that you're injured. Or if you're hurt, do not be afraid. I will not think any less of you. Like, we don't say that to these kids a lot of times. And that's, again, Mike, don't get me wrong. There's strong-willed people everywhere. I remember being a hockey player as a kid and feeling invincible. I remember it. There was no injury that could stop me, right? Till there was. But I remember that feeling. Right? It's impossible for a young player or a teenager to not feel that way. That's just part of growing up. But I remember having conversations with my father about this. And again, I think this would be different now. I used to tell him, if I don't get up, I'm really hurt. Because my mentality was, if I can move my legs, I'm going to get off the ice. Right. And it was actually a shoulder injury that kept me down. Right. So, but I always felt safe. Right. I never thought they would put me in harm's way. It's just a conversation, a coach and a player. I don't want you to be afraid to tell me that you're injured. Right. I won't think any less of you. I'm not saying you should say, I'll put you back on the ice or I'll do this. Don't promise him anything, but just let him know no one's going to think any less if you get hurt and you can't play.
But just so you know too, I think in our audience, there's a huge swath of the athletic world,
right,
that thinks kids would use that in the worst way. Like they think, oh, well, this kid's he's using this excuse to get out of this. And you can't present that message. It is. I hear it all the time. Like, oh, he's a little soft, or she just doesn't want it bad enough. I'm like, well, and I think that goes back to your original question with Teresa. Is it pain, or is it an injury? Like, did you get whacked in the arm, and somebody slashed you, and you're like, oh, that really hurt. Okay, well, yeah, it's gonna hurt. You're playing athletics. It hurts. It's not. I fell off my bike. That hurt. Oh, my knee. Well, your knee is still intact, and okay, we're gonna scrape a little bit of the asphalt out of there, right? And I do with my kids all the time, because you don't want them to be like, oh, I'm giving up. That was I got hurt. Yeah, you got hurt. Let's get up. You're not injured,
right? And
we can get by this. But I think when we keep going, and I think Teresa, you said it. It's so hard from the concussion side, because there is no visual. Like, there's no, like, your brain, you're not cut open, and you're just injured. You're inside. You're hurt. If I hurt my elbow, I can assess. Oh, yeah, that's pretty bad. Let's go to the hospital. You know what I mean? Like, you can see it. And I think that's such a hard thing for all of us as parents. You're like, okay, do you brush it off and you say, hey, you kiss the boo-boo to my 5-year-old and get back out there? Or do you sit them out and put them in a bubble? I struggle with that all the time.
Right. Right. And Mike, I'll just say, follow up, because I agree with you. I think what I'm saying about telling the kids that is that so you get to make the gauge on whether it is just pain or an injury, right? Because I'm a big believer of, look, if it hurts but you're not injured, yeah, you get back out there. That's a life lesson right there, right? And again, the question I always asked was, can I get hurt worse if I play with it, right? Yeah. Assuming it's not something major. If the answer was yes to that, I always went back out there. I'm sorry. If the answer was no to that, I always went back on the ice. Yeah, no, if the answer was yes, I wanted to go back in the ice, but I thought about it. But anyway, Teresa and Christie, we should let you share your thoughts on this as well.
Go ahead, Christie.
I mean, I've had occasions where, my kids would say, I really, I didn't tell you this afterwards, after the game, but my wrist really hurts. And then we go and get it checked out. We find out whether or not it's just, a bad bruise, or if there's something serious going on. But it is hard to get your kids to tell you that, because they want to play. So I want them to feel comfortable telling me before the game, and then we can assess it rather than afterwards. So that is a tricky thing, right? Because yes, you want your kids to be tough, and you want them to go out there and play. And if they just have, a couple of scrapes or bruises, and maybe their stomach hurts a little bit, play through it. But then if it's something serious, you have to make sure that they stay off the ice so it doesn't progress. Right. But my kids would never tell me before they went to game if something bothered them. And that always bothered me, because I wanted to have the opportunity to assess before and not after. So if there's a way you can get your kids to share that with you.
Yeah. I'm not under any assumption that my kid's going to tell me he's hurt if he wants to play, but I'm
right.
It's what happens throughout the course of the injury. So like let me give another metaphor. Maybe this will explain what I was saying better. It's like drinking, right? I think this is really great advice that I got. They said, when your kids are teenagers and alcohol comes into the equation, right? Or they're aware of it. He said, tell your kids that if you do something stupid and go out, if you're drunk, just call me. Don't drive home. I won't be mad at you. I won't say anything. That's how I look at this. I'm not expecting them to tell me they're going to go do something if they're hurt, but it's that conversation afterwards. I don't want them to ever be afraid to come to me if they need me for anything. Again, I'm the youngest hockey parent here, so I could be wrong on this. But yeah, Christie, I'm not under any illusion that my kids are going to come up to me and be like, "Hey, my wrist hurts. I can't play today." Like, you know what I mean? But I want them to.
It doesn't happen.
My kids had trouble with that because my husband, Gerard, is a pharmacist, and me being a physical therapist, we were constantly looking at him, evaluating him. You're not walking right. You're not holding it right.
Right.
You gotta, and right away,
they're gonna know.
Kids, my nieces and nephew called me Aunt Pokey, because as soon as they were born, I was doing like all these motor tests on them, constantly saying,
poking them.
I was Aunt Pokey. But my kids, they're like, oh, Mom, I can't get away with anything with you. I go, no, you can't, you know. but it's tough when you have that knowledge of what's right. And my husband being a pharmacist, he's like, well, that's swollen. You need an anti-inflammatory right now. And he'd spill out all this stuff. So, you know, we had our kids covered, you know. Right. They couldn't get away with anything.
What advice would you give to Pray? I mean, when do you know when it's okay for them to go out and when should you hold them down?
Yeah, you know, you need to be trained. You really have to go to a specialist that could tell you, yes, your kid is ready. And they have to know if it's hockey, you want them to go back, but they have to know the sport. Like groin injuries. Right. When is it right for a kid to go back? How many groin injuries have you guys seen? A lot?
Enough.
Yeah, you've experienced it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've had a few of those.
So I'm going to test you, and there's a real simple thing you could do. You have a slippery floor, and you put either sliders, you know, those sliders to move furniture, or you could take 2 towels and you put them underneath their knees and you make them slide out as far as they can go. And you assess the range of motion. If one's going out farther than another, you know, like, you're not ready yet. So that's an easy test. You always do a provocative test. You put the extremity in a position of stress, and then you see what way relieves the stress.
Right.
Like I'll put them through that. They have to be able to bring that leg all the way back. I'm going to look at, do they have full range of motion to totally extend that leg? And then I'll test the glute muscle. I'll physically give it a resistance to see and compare it right, left. I'm always comparing right and left. I'm looking for balance. I'm looking at the back. I'm looking at the shoulder. I've seen have you seen fractured clavicles at all? Mm-hmm. And you have seen that. Okay, so you're going to have a little dip in here. You have a big bubble. That's how it heals. You have a big bubble. Well, I'm going to look and see, you know, if the shoulder has full range of motion, that they can go through and shoot that puck in all different positions. Can they go do the Superman slide on the ice? I want to see if they can do that. And if they're like this, I'm like,
Teresa, I have a quick question, because I mean, just like all of our episodes, this we could add 9 here. So if you're, from your point of view, from you know, a physical therapist and from somebody that has to evaluate these injuries after the fact, what can we do as hockey parents to be proactively, like you're talking about, you know, assessing range of motion and proprioception and you know, the ability, right? Yeah. So all of these things. So I mean, from my point of view, I mean, from my side of like the hockey world, right? I would ask a kid, I'd rather do gymnastics and movement clinics way over a power skating clinic, you know, in their early development. Because I think what happens is, you know, because we're not taking care of those areas that are going to be injured ahead of time, and then we're just going to try to fix them. But what would you suggest, you know, youth, specifically hockey parents in this case, you know, what are some things they can do proactively to make sure all these kind of range of motion, and we can reduce groin injuries and hamstring injuries and hip flexion issues? I mean, is it just not being overused?
First thing you have to look at how sedentary your child is. Are they spending a long time in front of their TV, computer,
on the phone?
They have to be outside at the playground, using that playground equipment. My kids, we went hiking, biking, we did everything. I know my son was telling his girlfriend, he never went to an amusement park before. And he went on a Ferris wheel for the first time. Oh my God, my parents never did this. We didn't. We were in the mountains the whole time. But
I guess what I'm saying though, so I'm hearing that, you know, the getting off the couch after 7 hours and going to a power skating clinic is not going to help you, because there's no preventive part of that pre-activity.
Right. You have to see what your kids are doing. You know, are they outside with their friends? Are they enjoying themselves? You know, that's what I did. I just, my kids, well, we lived in Saugerties. It's very rural. So and we only had antenna TV. So we were very rustic. So they were like, this is terrible, Mom. So they just went outside and they did crazy stuff outside, you know, imaginative stuff. And we went on these crazy vacations.
Yeah.
Then finally,
Yeah, so I mean,
you have to enjoy being outside.
You gotta get them off their phones. They're constantly texting. They're constantly in front of those video games. You need to get them outside playing. Just
to be normal.
Yeah,
you know,
that's going to keep them in better shape for hockey, for any sport.
Let's be honest. In the hockey space now, outside, inside, there's plenty of tools and things you can do right now to stay active all the time. So like, even if it's raining outside, there's no excuse, right? But staying active, you know, Teresa, what's funny is you mentioned groin injuries before. Something I remember about any kind of injury like that, or a muscle injury, was I remember always thinking maybe it'll magically be better tomorrow, and it never was. You know, the trick is it takes time. Those injuries take time, and you know, I've had more than one time where I've pulled a groin or a hamstring, and I go back just a little bit too early. Maybe there's little to no pain, and it happens again right away because it wasn't ready yet. And you know, again, that's very tough. That's very tough for a kid.
I mean, you have to let your kids do other sports other than hockey.
Totally.
Did you ever hear of skijoring?
No.
Did you ever hear? Okay. We had Huskies and Malamutes for dogs. And you attach a harness to your pelvis. You attach a harness to the dog, and you're on cross-country skis, and they pull you. So my kids, to keep up with us, we hooked our dogs to them. They pulled. But we were leading and the dogs were behind, and they're just going. Sometimes the dogs would go off track. That was a little rough. That got a little rough. But that's a Canadian sport. Did you ever heard of skijoring?
No. Now that you're mentioning it,
it's so much fun.
But yeah, no.
I'll send you a video of me doing it. It's hysterical.
Yeah, so we need our entire audience to partake in that as well, please. So homework.
But those kind of things, you know, we love cross-country skiing. That was one of the best sports. And then you do skating on skis. Have you ever done? Okay, that's exactly what you do in hockey, you know, and that stretches the tissues out. But you have to think, you know, a variety of sports. What's going to help, you know?
Yeah, we talk about, it's a common theme on the show, that being a multi-sport athlete is insanely important, and that most professional athletes played. I really have rarely seen a professional athlete that didn't play multiple sports. And most professional athletes' parents could be drafted by two different sports. There's plenty of NHL players that were drafted into the MLB, and football players that were trying to be brought into MLB. I mean, an athlete is an athlete. It's not just one sport, right? I think it's important to note here. So we're getting close to the end of the episode. I want to make sure that Christie, you and Mike, if you have any other questions, now is the time.
Yeah, I mean, you're really inspirational. I mean, she is the reason why our family got into hockey.
It is, you know, it's so funny.
Yeah,
it is so funny, you know.
And so I owe you a huge debt, because
I owe
changed my life.
That little girl, Megan. Megan was amazing, getting my daughter to play, then my son, then you, and blah, blah, blah. Then it came a book.
We didn't get into too much of, but she also organized a women's hockey team called the Nightmares.
Yeah, you can tell us about that, please.
Yeah. Just a little bit about it.
I started the mom's hockey in March at the Kiwanis Ice Arena, because all the kids left to play their spring sports, so I could get a high valued time, like 7:30 was perfect for a mom to play hockey, because the kids are fed, they're all done, they could leave their family for an hour and come to the arena and go back home and get them to bed. It was just the perfect time. So I got 2 times a week to play mom's hockey. I made it extremely cheap. My friend, I have this really good friend, Johnny Mullen. He gave me a scholarship to purchase the ice. So the women had to pay $5 to get on the ice a week. It was so economically easy. But it was just because of my friend. He bought the ice for me. So I got it for a whole month. And I did that for 3 years in a row. And then finally the women were like, we want to have a team. I go, oh, all right. So we started going once a week. And then we ended up going to a tournament called Stick It to Brain Tumors in, I think it was Rensselaer, Albany, Rensselaer, the rink up there. And we won. I couldn't believe we won. I go, holy cow, we won. We were like, I can't believe it. We're sitting in the locker room totally in shock. It's like, how could we have done that? And then it just evolved from there.
I love the stories that you share with the women who felt camaraderie, and one of them was going through a divorce.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And it just saved her. It saved her. It saved her.
Yeah.
You know,
she had something to talk about because her kid played hockey. So now she played, now she understood the sport, and they could have a language. They could have an actual conversation.
Right. So if there are other moms out there listening, you know, this is something that you can do too. My sister did it. It wasn't terribly easy, but if you're determined, you can find a way to do it. And it might be something that is, it's your own every week. It's your thing,
I know.
And you can relate to your kids and
you
have a little deeper appreciation for what they do.
If you're teaching women how to skate for their first time, they feel awkward, but it's okay. As a coach, you have to be willing to get down on your hands and knees, grab their skates, pull it towards you. This is how you have to stop. And you just go, and then you make them practice. No, you get back down and and then you keep making them do that. You have to just physically get down low. And then eventually they stop and they're so shocked. They're like, oh, I did it. And they're so happy. And then you teach them to shoot a puck. Okay, now you have to look. You have to look. Your stick has to follow it. You have to follow. Look at that. And then they're, oh, I did it. I'm like, yes, you did. How about that? And then you think they're all that. They talk to their kids
Teresa,
like they're NHL players.
I do not know how your students deal with how boring that you are. There's just no excitement. No, you sound like a fantastic coach. I can tell that just from
I did pediatric PT for a long time. So it's like, ooh, you have to be like this all the time. My husband goes, can you just turn that down?
No, that enthusiasm is infectious. I'll put it that way. We need more people in the world like
He's like, why are you up at 5:30 in the morning singing down Scooby Doo down for the dogs? I get my dogs.
That's her.
That's who you are. Yeah, I'll tell you this too, just on the team that you created. I've worked with several organizations that use hockey as a vehicle for psychological needs, and whether it be veterans or women or someone going through a divorce, whatever. Psychologically, it's been proven that we need to be in groups. We need to be on teams. That human beings are not meant to be alone. We're just not. Even as an introvert, you're meant to work with other people and be part of something that's striving towards something. So I applaud you for doing that. And you would have won whether you won that tournament or not, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Well, I had such nice support at the Kiwanis Ice Arena. The director there, Robbie Kleeman. You know Robbie, right?
No.
I do.
He just let me do anything. Well, Sean Bodie, we're friends. We have a mutual friend, and Sean Bodie and Robbie Kleeman, they just gave me, do whatever you want. Sometimes they would give me the ice for free. They would give it to me for free.
That's a
I was
gift.
like, oh, that's nice. Thank you.
It's nice to see that kind of support. Because obviously
very
they saw
funny.
the benefits and
Right.
how it was helping, people who needed to.
Oh,
be
they
part of
just shook
something.
their head at me when I was out there. They're like, oh my God, what are you doing now? I have the most ridiculous drills.
That's okay. Listen, now you get to shake your head back and anybody doesn't believe, right? Again, you guys are both trailblazers in your own right. Mike, any final thoughts before we end this?
No, as always, learned a lot today. And I think it's, it's great to see, I think everybody in these little hockey communities, have to have people like you, Teresa, or else they don't succeed. You could have great managers and hockey directors and people like that. But, if you don't have the people that are going to get on their hands and knees, showing somebody how to stop,
Right,
and recruiting players to come out no matter what, and finding the ways to get ice and get equipment and get sleds.
You gotta make it fun, or they lose interest.
I'm sure the audience, people that listen to us and people that we talk to every day just outside of this, it's always like, oh yeah, I wish I had that, or I wish we did this, or I wish we did this. Well, here's living proof that you just do it. Just find somebody in your community, and people can find ways to, use their passion, which obviously, hockey is one of those things, to help all these other people and countless. I mean, I'm sure you could go down the list, but there's countless people that you've helped throughout your, time through Pauling and Kiwanis that, don't even realize probably what you did in the background of things. So it's great. And certainly I applaud you. And I think it's great for hockey. And I love the fact that you've done your level 4. You're going to do your level 5.
I don't know that. You have to write a thesis for that. You got to go down to Washington, don't you?
Oh, now Minnesota this year. So you can go to Minnesota.
Oh, Minnesota.
Hockey country there. So.
That's a long trip. We'll see. Maybe I will. When it goes back to Washington, that's at least
back on the East Coast. Yep.
Yeah, that I can drive to.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, Teresa, I gotta be honest with you. It's been awesome having you on the show. I love this much energy in the morning. I hope our audience does too. And no, we'll have to have you back. I remember the conversation we were talking about. Does anybody know a physical therapist? And Christie,
you want me back?
I know one. Well, I do. Yeah, I can't speak for the rest of my co-hosts. I mean, I'm going to guess that your sister likes you. I mean, that's why you're on today. But no, you were a wonderful guest. And again, to the audience, I hope that you learned a lot today. This might be one you want to go back and review and make sure that you take the information that Teresa talked about, because it's very important stuff. This is as fun as this show is, and as funny as we think we are. It's no joking matter when it comes down to injuries, right? And you were a valuable guest.
No.
So thank you.
You can never get away with an injury with me on the team. You can never get away.
Find that person. Coaches, find that person that they can't get away with it. So
I'm gonna know. You can't hide it from me.
That's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Thanks so much to Teresa Marzec for being on here. For Christie Casciano Burns and Mike Benelli, I'm Lee Elias. Make sure you check out all of our episodes on ourkidsplayhockey.com, or just search through your favorite podcast provider. We're there. That's it for this one, guys. Have a great one. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care.